This is the Jeff Santos Show.
33 minutes past the hour. It is indeed the Jeff Santos Show that you're tuned into. We're here every Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 Eastern Time, 12 to 3 Pacific. And, of course, that's where we go right now, to our good friend up in the Pacific Northwest. He, of course, is a great journalist. You can check out Democracy Watch News every Tuesday here on the Jeff Santos Show. He's a great musician as well. And I know, like a lot of us, he wants to get back on stage there and get back in those great clubs of the Showbox and other places that he has performed in the past, and big-time bands like Pearl Jam and others have as well. Great to have MTC back with us. Mark, thank you for that text earlier. We connected the dots with Melissa on the police unions. That is great to hear from our friends at King County Labor. Welcome, my friend. Hope everything is well and you had a good Labor Day weekend.
You gotta save the Showbox. They're very good to me. You gotta save the Showbox. Been very good to me. Don't you let her tear it down and leave us here in misery.
Yeah. No, we're having a good time going out on the water again. So I'm sorry if it's a little noisy in the background here. Got to go through the Ballard Locks to get out to Puget Sound on this inland waterway here, because Lake Washington and Lake Union are 9 feet higher than sea level.
So let me ask you, because I've actually taken the ferry boats out there off of Whidbey Island into the city. Is that the same area where you're at?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, I said I've actually taken the ferry from Seattle to Whidbey Island and back and forth. Is that where you're at right now?
No, actually, although we've also done that a lot. You can take the ferry out to Bainbridge Island and go to Winslow, which is Eagle Harbor, and have some great fresh clam chowder, which you can't get anywhere else in the country. But no, we were actually on the inland waterways. The Army Corps of Engineers back in, I think, 1909 cut a canal from Lake Washington through Lake Union to Elliott Bay so that ships could go directly between those 3 lakes, because there was a lot of ferry traffic. A lot of people lived on those lakes and had no other way to get around. And so they have the Chittenden Locks, is what they're called. It's actually a federal facility, and so don't smoke your pot there, even though pot is legal in Washington State, folks. But they do lower the boats down, so it took us a while last time when we went to Bainbridge Island, which was like a week ago. It took quite a while because there were like 12 boats all trying to get through the locks at the same time. So they brought us all in to the same area and dropped us all at the same time. And these guys who have tethers, they're actually attached to these railings to make sure they don't fall between the boat and the metal side of, or the concrete side of the locks there. But no, we're actually headed through Lake Washington and Lake Union, which yesterday was very windy. It was Labor Day, so I expected, everyone wanted to get on the water, but it was so windy that unless you had a really good sailboat or a really nice powerboat, it just was blowing people all over the place. But I did get a chance to hang out with some folks connected to Dave Grohl, by the way. So anyway,
oh, wow.
I'm still looking for a drummer, which is, the motto of Seattle, looking for a drummer, need a drummer. And I'll pay anybody a finder's fee. I don't care. But apparently Dave is pretty booked right now, but he, I think, had a chance to see me perform yesterday via a live stream, a small Labor Day gathering due to a mutual friend who was there. So who knows? I mean, she put out the word. So, but I am definitely looking for a drummer. Apparently Dave was involved in having a drum duel with a young girl that day who loves to play drums. So he was teaching her a few things, and she was probably teaching him a few things from what I hear, because somebody said that she actually won, which was kind of funny. But,
wow. That's pretty
and then
awesome.
we were talking to really fascinating friends who are amazing world travelers, and they've been on just about every continent on the planet. It's just what they do for fun. And it just so happens that they work for a travel agency, so they get great deals. And we're hoping to book a trip with them to Fiji in the South Pacific in a year or two, because I would really love, like our musical trendsetter up here, Eddie Vedder, I'm very much a beach bum. I love the water, I love snorkeling and scuba diving and boating and sailing. So I might just decide to hang out on those white sandy beaches for a while under a palm tree, wasting away in Margaritaville or something like Jimmy Buffett. I don't know.
There you go.
Sounds like a very nice dream. I can't imagine how great it would be. Scuba diving in the South Pacific has got to be great. But,
We're talking to the great Mark Taylor-Canfield here on the Jeff Santos Show. Mark, as I said, we're spending a lot of time with labor this week and talking about the importance of them. As we just talked to Melissa Tomlinson of Badass Teachers, which again is an association, not a strict labor union, but all of the members of Badass Teachers either belong to the AFT or the NEA. So there you go. I think it was fantastic with what they did, particularly in light of what all the abuses have been in Seattle by the police there. I think this is really important to separate in a more progressive city, and maybe this starts a trend in other parts of the country as well to do the same thing.
Well, what happened is that the King County Labor Council, which is the largest labor group in the area in Martin Luther King Jr. County, they actually voted to kick out the Seattle Police Officers Guild. And so a lot of the labor representatives are saying that they're not a union. And they do call themselves a guild, not a union. And, so I have to be careful in the way I report this because I want people to understand that, in general, there's a lot of support for labor unions in Seattle. But in this particular case, it's just happening across the country. And some of it, I believe, comes from statements made by sometimes the presidents of these guilds or police unions, some really outlandish statements about Black Lives Matter being terrorists, like the Minneapolis police union leader there was saying. And by the way, Jeff, it's just breaking news. Just a few hours ago, the Rochester, New York police leadership resigned in the wake of...
Yes, I saw that. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, so things are happening all across the country, and I definitely was tweeting out and posting on Facebook that, come on, kudos to all of the hard-working people in this country who built this country, who built the bridges, who built the highways, who built the buildings, who made this infrastructure and built this country. So that's not what people were protesting about in Seattle yesterday when 22 people were arrested. They were protesting the fact that the Seattle Police Guild is not a union, and every time they try to do a protest near the police union headquarters in Seattle or Portland, the police get very, very defensive and start pushing back. So workers in this country, they need a livable wage, right? They need decent health care. So those are the things that people should be fighting for. As far as the police guilds are concerned and the police unions, they're just very unpopular in some communities across the country. And then, you also have this situation that I was talking about in Seattle, where formerly the Washington State Patrol had actually a stellar reputation as being very professional, very high standards in order to become a trooper in Washington State. But they don't know how to deal with demonstrators. So I witnessed manhandling demonstrators at the state capitol. I won a major federal civil rights lawsuit against the Washington State Patrol because of violations of freedom of the press. And now I see them here in Seattle during a protest on I-5, like 4 white police officers brutalizing a black man who was in his car on the freeway who was part of the protest, and they literally just grabbed him and pulled him out of the car and threw him around. It was terrible. And then another officer there who apparently was in charge or whatever, then was using his body to intimidate and threaten a black woman who was complaining about the violent arrest. So, I don't know what's happened to the Washington State Patrol, but there are lawsuits against the Washington State Patrol. One of the lead stories recently in Seattle is the amount of money that's being paid out. And I predicted this in many places that there would be major lawsuits, civil rights lawsuits and settlements paid out. Well, yes, guess what? Now the Washington State Patrol has been sued. The Seattle Police Department has been sued. The city has been sued. There are multiple lawsuits and lots of money being paid out, which is at a time when there's such an economic downturn. We can't really afford that. So it's a legal liability. That's the news story, right? This is an economic and legal liability to have police treating people inhumanely. I mean, come on. It's just not necessary. So we got that situation going on. You've got the situation down in Portland where some Proud Boys apparently attacked some Black Lives Matter protesters. I mean, it's crazy. So I come back from the water where it's really nice and peaceful, and up here you get away and there's a hawk flying above you and there's beautiful trees everywhere and it's just a beautiful place to be. And you come back to the city and I'm expecting tear gas again. It's like 22 arrests, and that was yesterday, and those arrests were part of a protest that was trying to focus on this issue of the fact that the Police Officers Guild has way too much power, that they have become very politicized. They have spoken out, the Police Guild president has spoken out saying that people need to vote against the city council members because they've, tied the hands of the police legislatively, which is what the former police chief Hartmann said, who, by the way, did resign. So I guess the protesters can talk that up as one of their demands being met, is that she just said, I'm out, I'm getting out. So she's gone. The assistant deputy police chief has taken over. I haven't really seen much of a policy change in the way that the police are treating the protesters since that. So I don't know whether we can expect to see a policy change or not, Jeff. I mean, I'm hoping that at some point there will be a police chief and a mayor that will understand that they should be on the right side of history during this movement and do the right thing and stand up against racism and police brutality. But instead, the police chief and the mayor continually have supported the police even after 15,000 plus complaints have been filed against them. So I don't know what you call that. Some might call it corruption. Others would call it malfeasance or just incompetence. But I call it bad politics. And I doubt it's going to get Mayor Dinea Durkan reelected next year when she runs for office again.
Well, speaking of that, actually, you got Jay Inslee, and of course the state goes under his territory, his command. How has he talked about what happened with the state police? I saw that on Twitter with you. Has he made a statement on this?
I don't, he somehow, Jeff, I can't figure it out. He's just somehow seems to try to rise above all this stuff, so he doesn't get directly involved, and he should be making statements, and I hope he is. The only thing I heard him say was that he did not welcome or support federal police coming into the state, and he's always been very adversarial with the Trump administration. But he has not, at least recently, been a target. Now, he of protests, but he may be now that the Washington State Patrol is being sued and some of the things we've seen there, because that's his police, that's the state police, and if they don't know how to handle demonstrators, then they need to go through some new training or something, because inciting people the way that the Seattle Police Department does is only going to add to people's anger, is only going to add to more accusations of police brutality and racism. I mean, what I saw in that video on Interstate 5 was really shocking to me, Jeff. I really did not expect to see Washington State Patrol treating people like that. But I don't know, the police are using really heavy-handed tactics, even as people are protesting against their own brutality. So it doesn't make much sense politically. It doesn't make much sense in a lot of ways. There is this cynical joke going around that since 374 Seattle police officers made over $200,000 in salary, then, and that's not even including benefits, then and one officer made $414,000, which is more than the President of the United States. There's a cynical joke going around that, well, what do you do if you're a police officer and you're at a protest? You think, let's use some pepper spray, let's rough some people up, let's make them mad, because, this is good overtime, and we'll be back tomorrow. So keep them going.
There's too much violence by people in uniform, and I understand that it's not an easy job, but this is now out of control. And if it wasn't for cell phone video, we would never have seen this stuff, which has obviously been going on for a long time. Talking with our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield here on the Jeff Santos Show. Go ahead, Mark.
those 22 arrests took place outside the Seattle Police Officers Guild headquarters yesterday. So it's directly related to the fact that it was Labor Day and how the police guild has been acting and how it hasn't been acting in solidarity with other unions. And so that was the reason that people were marching yesterday. So that tells you where they're at. I mean, there's a political divide between the police department and a lot of the rest of the community. Of course, there are law and order folks everywhere, I do have to say this, too, though. In Salem, Oregon, where those Black Lives Matter protests got, attacked by the pro-Trumpers, whatever they're calling them these days, the police at one point did move in and intervene really quickly and arrested the Proud Boy looking guys. So I mean, I do have to say, they did at that point. It showed what the professional side of law enforcement, which they actually were trying to stop somebody from being brutalized. And so sometimes police, that's kind of the more kind of policing you like to see, right? Where they actually step in to stop violence rather than inciting
right.
it.
Oh, exactly. That's what they need to do. How much is the Boogaloo, the right-wing extremist groups masquerading as protesters, masquerading as those from Black Lives Matter and others, how much of that has been an issue in Seattle?
I haven't, especially for the last few days, except for yesterday, I haven't been on the street or following a lot of Twitter feeds and things, so I'm not really sure. It hasn't been something that people have approached me about, but as far as my reporting is concerned, I think you'll find that I try pretty hard not to promote information or give information about groups that promote violence. So when it comes to reporting on those groups, I tend to not try to give them more publicity. And the same thing with any side of the issue, if there's violence involved, I tend to not report as much about those things, because I think they get enough publicity, and I don't think that it helps. I'm trying, as a reporter, I'm trying to make sure that I don't spread misinformation too. So it's very interesting, though, to see these times when the community actually really does come together. People forget, but there was a march in Seattle. It was a silent march, and there was a 6-foot rule, but 80,000 people marched from the predominantly black neighborhood in the Central District to all over the city. I'm just saying the march went on for miles and miles, and you could stand on a street corner for an hour and still see people marching by. So when you see moments like that, you realize that it is an historic movement, it is an historic moment, and that's the direction things are headed. Like I said before, the Women's March here had 130,000 participants. That's when the community really shows who we are here, and it's not a bunch of people, chasing people down and carrying an American flag and waving weapons. That's not it. It's a different vision of America, which is a lot more diverse, a lot more peaceful, and a lot less divisive. In order to work in a diverse community together, you have to work together. You can't be divisive and you can't be confrontational. It just doesn't get you anywhere.
Mark Taylor-Canfield, our Renaissance man. Mark, one of the things I've caught on some of the commercial television here is, I think, both Facebook and I want to say Red Wing Shoes, but I'm not positive about it. Some companies that have really come to the rescue, and again, I don't have any sort of belief that Facebook is doing this out of the goodness of their heart. But a lot of the small businesses, and of course you have been fighting for a long time, not only with the Showbox, but a lot of these others. Are these different cities, and I don't know if the Showbox has other places around the country. I know that the band here in Boston, the folks that have been very much involved politically, they have recently started closing a couple of bars, and I'm wondering if there is, a movement from city to city to protect the local restaurants and the local bars.
There are some grants that are available. The mayor, actually, I can say something good about Jenny Durkan and I guess Maria Tomlinson, the excellent director for Badass Teachers, who I loved listening to. Also, Robert Craig, he was great today. I have to listen to both of them because it makes me much more intelligent. But I think that she just set aside $95 million for the Seattle school system. Thank you. So the priorities, maybe, people are starting to see priorities differently. They're starting to think that, well, we need to invest in small businesses, in the local arts and culture, in local economy, in the local schools. And there is some money that the city was able to find. We're still headed for hard times here. They're going to have a hard time trying to reach their budget goals. And that's why one suggestion, might be, maybe since you have, 374 people making over $200,000 a year, maybe cutting the Seattle Police Department budget is not such a bad idea. It's not so radical, right, when you see stuff like that.
Right. Well,
there are some local grants available for small businesses and even some small arts organizations and musicians that were set up. And some people have been able to take advantage of it. The people who have been able to qualify and use those grants, it's actually helped save their businesses. It's helped save their careers as artists. And some people, the Northwest Film Forum, which does a lot of independent film production and screenings, they were able to get a grant, I think, through the city's arts and culture department, and they were able to do okay, and nobody got laid off. Well, they're not making a lot of money, but then they're a nonprofit. So
right. Let me interrupt because we just got a couple of minutes. What happened in Boston is the rock band, very popular with the Red Sox fans and others, the Dropkick Murphys owned a bar called McGreevy's, and they just closed because of the pandemic. I'm wondering, if that would open the door to some other bands, that are involved with restaurants and so forth to sort of rallying to each other. That's what I wanted to get your thoughts on.
That's a great idea. I invite you to come to Seattle and help organize that, Jeff, because you do a great job and you might be successful. No, I haven't thought about that, but that is an idea. I did play my song, Save the Showbox, yesterday for that small group of world travelers, and they really appreciated it. Really did get people thinking again about how we're going to save this culture. I do want to say something really quick, though, that, part of the issue that we need to understand is that when the police arrested 22 people outside the Seattle police officers' gate yesterday, it's because they declared an unlawful assembly. So what they do is they declare riots or unlawful assemblies, and then you have to question whether they actually do respect the First Amendment and the right of people to peacefully assemble to redress their government or to petition the government for redress of grievances. So I just wanted to put that out there, that in Portland, Seattle, and other places, the police use that as a way of shutting protests down and arresting people. And we have to question, once again, there should be no doubt in people's mind why we're having so many civil rights lawsuits filed against police departments when you see that kind of thing happen, because there has to be some allowance for people's right to protest, and especially against police brutality. It just makes sense that if you're a police department that you would want to kind of back off. Also, I agree with Dan Rather. It's time to take a critical look at our history, and I think
for sure
a critical look at our political structures. And in my mind, I'm looking at something like reparations and reconciliation councils like they had in South Africa. I took a journalism course from Dan Rather, so I'm very tuned into what he's been tweeting lately. He's a very sharp guy. He's really had his finger on it for a long time. So, but if you want to see more of my videos and things, you can go to the YouTube channel with my name, Mark Taylor-Canfield, and then Democracy Watch News. We're doing our podcast, Democracy Cast. So we've got good stuff up there about the Seattle protests and what's going on. And I just want to
fighting out there for us, man. Enjoy the boat.
Thanks to everybody who supports independent media. It's so important these days, with the United States ranked 45th in the world in terms of press freedom by Reporters Without Borders. So everybody who supports the Jeff Santos Show, you're doing the right thing.
Thank you, man. You're the best. Keep on fighting. Keep safe. I want to thank Ron Kreider for producing this broadcast. Thank you for listening, folks. As we always say, keep on fighting. Because right now it's my time to say, I gotta go.